God's Triangle really came about by accident. Back in the 1990s, I was out in Melbourne visiting my mother, and we were sorting out some old black and white family history photographs. Now, a lot of the people in those photographs I recognised, but there was one that really caught my attention, and that was this group photograph. Now, I recognised some of the people in it, but there was a tallish woman at the back I didn't recognise. And when I asked my mother about this, she got a bit embarrassed. She said, "Oh, well, that was Auntie Florrie. We didn't talk about her very much." And when I asked why, she became very evasive. And the more she became evasive, the more curious I got. I mean, I'd been a journalist for all these years. And when someone doesn't want to tell me something, I suspect that there's something going on. So I pressed her a bit, and she revealed that Auntie Florrie had been a missionary in East Bengal around the time of the First World War. She had married a missionary, and that during that marriage, her husband had become involved with another woman who was also a missionary. Now, that really did get me curious. My mother was saying all the time, look, I was only a little girl, nobody talked about it, so I really can't tell you that much. No, I mean, initially I just thought it was an interesting sidebar story in the family history. I mean, my wife, Rosemary, and I were very keen on family history, so I just thought, well, there you are. There's a little story that we can mention. But the more I investigated this, the more curious I became, and then particularly I became curious when I discovered that she had been divorced and that it was a secret, that nobody had talked about the divorce and there was no information about it. And when I approached the Supreme Court of Victoria in Melbourne, they wouldn't have let me see the file. Now, I thought this was very odd, but they were quite adamant that they not give me the file, because they said the judge at the time of the divorce had said that the file was to be closed for all time. Well, that really did get me curious. I found out most things, I think, in the end, but it took me 10 years. The trouble is, if I tell you now what I found out, or everything I found out, it would spoil the story for you. So I'm afraid I have to say that I can't tell you. But it was a most unusual situation, and it was something that I had never heard of. The circumstances were something completely new to me and to many other people, but I did learn that it was a very sad story. I suppose it's inevitable when you go into a project like this that you start to make judgments, and I felt fairly early on that my great aunt Florrie Cox was an innocent victim of some extraordinary circumstances. Now, her husband Frank Paice, the Revd Frank Paice, he got involved in an affair with another missionary, Olga Johnson. Now, obviously he shouldn't have done that, and it was certainly disapproved of in the church and by his family. But you do understand the circumstances were very, very different. very unusual, and I feel quite sorry for him. As the story progressed, as I discovered more, I became more and more sympathetic to his situation. As for Olga, well, Olga was certainly a very tough woman who was used to getting what she wanted, and she often did get what she wanted. But sometimes what she wanted wasn't particularly good for her and her life. As they say, be careful what you wish for.